My name is Sierra Halden. I'm 33 years old, former military intelligence, and according to the records filed with the Merrow Heights County Courthouse 2 months ago, I'm legally dead. Let's start there. Then Miss Reese slid the envelope across the table to me, thick cream-colored, legal-grade paper, sealed with wax signed notarized. Inside a contract, transfer of holdings, executive control of Halden Cairn Defense Group. Valued at $41 million, clean, tidy. I hadn't even touched it when my father lunged across the polished table like it had insulted his bloodline. He grabbed the envelope, tore it open, pulled the contract out with shaking fingers, and looked at me with the rage of a man watching history rewrite itself. "You think this brings you back," he snarled. And right there in front of the attorney, in front of my brother Marcus and Aunt Eliza, he struck a lighter and set the contract on fire. The flame curled the edges, devouring ink and legacy like it meant nothing. My grandfather's signature vanished into smoke. My inheritance turned to ash between my father's trembling fingers. No one moved. Marcus just stared. Eliza let out a sound like something had cracked inside her ribs. Miss Reese, our family lawyer for 30 years, didn't blink. She leaned back in her chair like this wasn't the first time she'd watched a man burn down an empire out of spite. And me, I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I didn't lunge for the paper like a desperate girl clawing back what was hers. I just smiled. Not the happy kind. Not the kind that forgives. The kind you wear when you already know the ending, and now you're just watching the rest of them catch up. Because what my father burned wasn't what he thought it was. He didn't know about the second envelope, still folded, still sealed, still warm in the inside lining of my coat pocket right where Grandpa told me to keep it. "Don't open this unless they try to destroy it," Grandpa had said, sliding the wax-sealed letter across the table at the Weatherly Cafe 1 month before he died. They'll try. Trust me. They had. And now it was my turn. But I didn't rush. I didn't gloat. I just sat there at that lacquered conference table with the lemon-scented polish and the cold smiles. I could feel the warmth of the fire fading from the wood in front of me while everyone else began to unravel. Marcus broke first. He started whispering to Eliza. Something about errors, misfilings, legal inconsistencies. My father accused Miss Reese of forgery like she was some criminal mastermind with a weakness for military granddaughters. They demanded a second reading. They questioned the language. They called the legitimacy of the document into doubt. "She's not even in the family anymore," Rhett spat. "She left. She disappeared. We thought she was—" He stopped himself before he said it, but I already knew. They hadn't just erased me emotionally. They erased me legally. If you're still reading this, let me tell you the first truth: people like them only understand power when they can see it. They believe if they burn the paper, they burn the proof. If they erase your name from the ledger, you stop existing. But they don't know me. They don't know what I learned in the mountains of Kandahar, or how many nights I spent staying invisible just to survive. They don't know what Grandpa told me the day I left, or why he said, "You're the only one I trust to finish what I started." So when my father flicked the charred ashes of my legacy across the table and told me I was out, I didn't argue, because I already knew I was the only one who was still in. Let me rewind for a moment, not for their sake, for yours. 6 years ago, I came home from an 18-month deployment, Syria Northern Ridge Patrol. We buried one of my friends under a rock pile when a roadside blast hit 2 feet from our tent. I had ringing in my right ear that still hasn't gone away. I came back on Thanksgiving. No parade, no hugs, no thank you for your service. Just my father standing at the door saying, "You didn't write." My room was gone. Physically gone. New wallpaper, new carpet. My medals, my journals, the flag from graduation all disappeared. In their place, beige armchairs, a fake orchid, and a framed quote about stillness. The door that used to say Sierra now said guest. Eliza passed me in the hall with a peppermint tea and muttered, "Don't be dramatic. You were gone like a year and a half." I left the next morning, moved into a crumbling apartment near the industrial rail line, took part-time night security shifts, waited for the VA to process my discharge. Every few weeks, a quiet wire transfer would appear in my account from M. Halden. No messages, no notes, but I knew it was him. Grandpa never forgot me, even when the rest of them did. And that's why I came back, not for them, not for closure, certainly not for forgiveness. I came back because I made Grandpa Halden a promise that if they tried to burn what he built, I'd be there with the fireproof match. And now they've lit the first flame. They think it's over. They think I'll vanish. But the truth is, they just started a war with someone who's already survived worse. And I've got the kind of evidence they can't burn. Only question left is how long until they realize it. Because the smile I wore at that table, it wasn't for them. It was the sound of the match striking back. Silence has a texture. Anyone who's ever worn a uniform knows that. There's the silence of a sniper's breath, the silence right before a breach, the silence after a radio cuts out and doesn't come back. But nothing compares to the silence that filled my childhood home the day I returned from war. No welcome banner, no home-cooked meal, just beige walls and the sound of my own boots echoing against hardwood that suddenly didn't feel like mine. It was November, Thanksgiving. I had been gone for over 18 months. Syria Convoy Protection Detail 3 stints with the Northern Ridge Division. I'd buried 2 journals, lost 7 friends, and nearly my right leg. My hearing was damaged, my sleep broken, my record spotless. I came home expecting, if not pride, then at least acknowledgement. Instead, I got cold tea and colder stares. My father looked up from the newspaper when I walked in. "You didn't write," he said. That was it. I stood there, my bag still on my shoulder, sand in the seams of my boots, and he went right back to reading about market volatility like I was a ghost interrupting his morning routine. My room was gone. Gone like someone had scrubbed the memory of me out of the house with bleach and brass polish. The bed replaced with 2 leather chairs. My bookshelf now held self-help books and a decorative globe that never spun. The walls were bare, the closet empty. The door had a new plaque. Guest. Eliza passed me in the hallway holding a mug that read, "Breathe." She gave me a tight-lipped smirk and said, "Don't be dramatic. You were gone for what, a year and a half? I almost laughed. But I didn't. Because I realized in that moment I wasn't coming home, I was intruding. That night I stayed silent, ate dinner in a kitchen that smelled of rosemary and distance. No one asked about Kandahar. No one asked about what it felt like to sleep in your boots for 4 months straight. My brother Marcus spent most of the meal scrolling his phone. My father talked about a merger. Eliza asked if I planned to get a real job. I left the next morning without saying goodbye. My apartment was a 3rd-floor walk-up near the train yard, the kind of place that always smelled like rust cigarette smoke and something vaguely metallic. I didn't hang pictures, didn't unpack much, didn't expect visitors. For the next year, I worked graveyard shifts at an industrial logistics yard. Security mostly, keeping drunk teenagers from tagging shipping containers and making sure no one stole pallets of copper wire. I wore a reflective vest instead of body armor. Traded sandstorms for factory exhaust. Every so often, a quiet wire transfer would hit my account, just enough to cover rent, food, gas, always from the same name. M. Halden. No notes, no calls, no questions. Just belief. Grandpa Marshall had always seen me. When I was 12 and I told him I wanted to enlist in the junior ROTC, he didn't blink. Just showed up the next week with a pair of military-grade boots my size, my name on the tag, and a grin like I'd passed some secret test. When my father called the military a dead end for people who failed business, Grandpa just said, "Maybe that's why your board meetings feel like war zones." He didn't pick sides. He picked me. And when the transfers stopped last year, I knew something was wrong. I only visited once, 3 months before he died. He was thinner, slower, but sharp as ever. We met at the Weatherly Cafe, our usual spot, and split a slice of lemon pie. He asked me if I still carried a sidearm. I asked him if he was finally ready to admit Eliza was siphoning money from the Halden Trust. He didn't laugh. Instead, he slid a wax-sealed envelope across the table. "Don't open it unless they try to destroy it," he said. I rolled my eyes. "You think they're going to set fire to $1 million contract?" He didn't smile. "I think they'll try to erase you." And just like that, I knew. We both knew. This wasn't a family. It was a legacy machine. And I was the loose gear they wanted gone. After the reading, after the fire, after I walked out of Dellinger and Reese with ashes in my wake, I didn't drive home. I went to the rooftop of my building, sat under a sky that refused to rain, and held that envelope in both hands like it might bite. It was heavier than I remembered. The wax seal uncracked. The weight of intent. I brought it downstairs and placed it on the kitchen counter just next to a chipped mug that said, "World's Okayest Vet." The envelope didn't move, didn't whisper answers, just waited. So I waited too, for the burn in my chest to settle, for the noise in my head to fade, for the part of me trained to react to let go. Then I opened it, carefully, slowly, like peeling back skin. Inside, a single sheet of legal paper and a USB drive taped to the back with red medical tape. The paper was typed, notarized, dated 3 weeks before he passed. It was a trust transfer. The contract they burned, just a decoy. The real transfer financial corporate total had already happened. Quietly, legally, bulletproof. The name on the trust mine. Not just as a beneficiary, as the owner. Halden Cairn. All of it. The USB clicked into my laptop with a satisfying snap. No password, no encryption. Just a folder titled, "Proof They Can't Bury." Inside, bank records, corporate control documents, legal filings, a video, file name M. Halden, final. I didn't play it yet. I just stared at the screen. Because this wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. And my hands were finally steady. It started with a glitch. I logged into my bank app to check the linked account, the one the trust document listed. I typed in my username, my password, the two-factor authentication code. Error. I tried again. Account not found. Then again, slower this time, like being gentle might help. Still nothing. The app bounced me back to the login screen like I didn't exist. I thought it was a bug. So I pulled out my backup debit card and tried to pay a utility bill. Declined. Tried again. Declined. This was more than a glitch. This was deliberate. I called the bank. The hold music was cheerful in a way that felt offensive. A guy named Dylan finally picked up. Sounded young, probably still working from his bedroom. "Hi, yeah, I said steady but sharp. My app says I don't have an account. Can you check that? Sure thing. Can I have your full name, date of birth, and last 4 of your social? I gave them all." He paused. "I'm sorry, Miss Halden," he said. "Our records show that this account was marked inactive." "Inactive how marked deceased, actually?" I sat up straighter. "That's a mistake." He paused again. His voice changed, like he'd suddenly realized he was in deeper waters. The status was certified by the registrar's office 2 weeks ago. I hung up before my voice cracked. Next stop, DMV. I stood in line behind a woman arguing about a ticket from 2006. The fluorescent lights buzzed like judgment. When I got to the counter, I handed over my ID and forced a smile. The clerk tapped a few keys, then frowned. "Ma'am," she said, "you're flagged as legally deceased. I'm standing right here. I get that, but the system doesn't. You'll have to file a correction through Vital Records. How long does that take? Could be months. Depends on processing." I walked out before I punched something. Back on the sidewalk, the world looked the same. But I didn't feel the same. I felt erased. People passed me without a second glance. Cars honked like they always did. But I knew what it meant to be invisible on paper and how easy it was for someone with money and motive to make it happen. And someone had. When I got home, I pulled out every letter Grandpa had ever sent me. There were dozens, folded into books tucked behind picture frames hidden in the back of drawers, each one written in the same steady hand, even near the end. He never missed a month, never used email, said handwriting was a kind of loyalty. In the oldest envelope wrapped in a handkerchief, I found something I hadn't touched in years, a brass key, faded tag, Langford Box 17. He'd given it to me on my 18th birthday with a single sentence, "You'll need this someday." Someday had arrived. Langford Secure Storage wasn't far. 15 minutes across town. Tucked between a closed wine shop and a shuttered print studio. The front door was just a blank steel panel with a buzzer and a red blinking camera. I pressed the button. A woman opened the door. Late 50s, crisp ponytail. Zero small talk. "You have a key," I handed it over. She checked the tag, cross-referenced a clipboard, and waved me inside. The hallway was long and cold. The air smelled like old metal and intention. We passed 6 doors before she stopped at one and typed in a code. "Take your time," she said. "Shut the door behind you." Inside silence. No windows. Just drawers lining concrete walls. I found box 17 halfway down waist high and slid it open. Inside, a black fireproof folder, a manila envelope, and no dust, like it had been waiting. The first thing I pulled out was a certified cashier's check. Same amount, $41 million. Same name, Sierra Halden. But this one had security threads, watermarks, anti-counterfeit features burned into the fibers of the paper. Taped to the back was a red sticker. Non-negotiable copy destroyed. I exhaled. So that's what they burned. Just the decoy. The manila envelope had a sticky note on the front in Grandpa's handwriting. Trust no one. Not even her. No name. Just her. But I had a guess. Inside, printouts of emails, handwritten notes, legal drafts, meeting minutes from Halden Cairn board sessions. Some of the papers had Amelia's name on them. My half-sister. My shadow. Quiet. Strategic. Dangerous in a way that didn't need volume. The final item in the drawer was heavier than paper. A flash drive in a velvet pouch, taped to it a note. Play only once. And only when you're alone. I pocketed it, got out of there fast. Back at my apartment, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and plugged it in. No folders, no icons, just one video. File name M. Halden Final. I clicked it. Grandpa's face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, paler, but steady. He sat in the sunroom of the Hollow Point house, light pouring over his shoulder like it was a stage. "If you're seeing this," he said, "then they did what I feared they'd do." His voice was calm, measured, like a mission briefing. "I watched them lie to you, erase your service, turn your silence into evidence. I stayed quiet too long. That ends now." He leaned forward. "You were the only one who told me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. That's why I left everything to you. Not just the money, the company, the land, the legacy, because you know what to do with it." Long pause. "Your father will try to erase you. He'll pretend you never existed. Let him." He smiled. Just barely. Because the only thing more dangerous than a man with power is a woman with receipts. Then the screen went black. No outro. No music. Just silence. The same kind that follows a detonation. The velvet pouch felt heavier now. Not physically, emotionally. It was the kind of weight you can't measure, only carry. I kept replaying his voice in my head. Because the only thing more dangerous than a man with power is a woman with receipts. The screen had gone black 10 minutes ago, but I still hadn't moved from the chair. I sat frozen, gripping the flash drive like it might bite if I let go. There was more. I could feel it. The drive held proof, but Grandpa never did anything halfway. There was always a backup plan, always a failsafe, and I hadn't found it yet. So I went back to the papers. I spread everything across my kitchen table. Meeting agendas, legal drafts, scans of handwritten notes. Most of them were signed in ink. I recognized his. But some had a different signature one I hadn't seen in years. Phoebe Winthrop, my stepmother, technically. She disappeared after Mom died. Married my father within the year. Quiet, cold, polished like a pearl in a locked case. I hadn't thought about her in forever. But there it was, her name, right below a legal filing time stamped 2 weeks before Grandpa's death. Filed through a small estate law firm in Carawell connected to a property held in trust under the Halden Foundation umbrella, a place I'd never heard of. And next to the property name Langford, Array 6B, not the same as the box 17 I'd already opened. This was something else, a second vault, a deeper vault, one I hadn't been meant to know about until now. The next morning, I packed light. Just the original documents, the USB backup my VA paperwork, and the keychain Grandpa had given me when I turned 19, shaped like a compass, but with no needle. I drove 3 hours southeast. Langford security vaults sat on the edge of Carawell, surrounded by steel fencing motion detectors and silence. The building looked less like a storage facility and more like an old war museum that forgot how to die. The parking lot was nearly empty. One black SUV, one motorcycle, and a rusted-out sedan. Inside the lobby was cool, clinical humming with fluorescent lights and faint electricity. The woman at the front desk wore a navy blazer and no name tag. She looked me over. Key, I handed it to her. She scanned it, then scanned my ID. Her eyes flicked up. You're dead, only legally, I said. I'm working on that. Her lips twitched like she wanted to smile, but had long since forgotten how. She typed something else into her console, then nodded once. Follow me. We passed through 3 security checkpoints, each door heavier than the last. Cameras tracked every step. The final hallway was cold enough to see your breath. I could hear the hum of oxygen-sealed climate controls. This wasn't just a vault. It was a containment chamber. The woman stopped at a matte black door labeled Array 6B and entered a code. You'll find it in the center row, shelf 3. Take your time. The door opened with a hiss. Then she was gone. This vault didn't look like Box 17. It didn't look like a storage room at all. It looked like an evidence locker rows of steel shelving biometric safes folders sealed in tamper-proof containers. No color, no labels, just purpose. I found Box 6B exactly where she said. Middle shelf, neutral gray casing, no dust, no fingerprint smudges, like someone had cleaned it just before I arrived. Inside a sealed manila folder with my name in block letters, a small black briefcase with combination latches, and a single handwritten note tucked beneath them. Sierra Halden underlined once. No salutation, no signature, just certainty. The briefcase clicked open with the kind of snap that made my chest tighten. Inside, a property deed, a corporate ledger, a flash drive lined in velvet. The deed was for the Hollow Foundation, a non-profit veteran center located on the outskirts of Carawell. I blinked. I'd never heard of it, never been there. But the name rang in my bones. The document listed me as executive director and sole owner, the date of transfer. 6 weeks before Grandpa died. No press release, no announcement, no family board approval, just a quiet, complete transfer of power. The ledger told the rest of the story. Grandpa had rerouted all of Halden Cairns' humanitarian assets through Hollow. Every program, every outreach grant, every federally matched donation. He gave me control of the only part of the company my father couldn't monetize. But that wasn't the headline. The final document showed something bigger. Full executive shares, transferred through a trust mechanism that bypassed the family board entirely, effective immediately upon his death. They never saw it coming, and now they'd already lit their match. I plugged the second flash drive into a fresh burner laptop I'd brought just for this. No title, no folders, just one video file, no name. I clicked play. Grandpa again. Same sunroom, different lighting, stacks of files around him. If you made it to Vault 2, he said, then you figured out the first one wasn't the whole picture. He held up a document. This is the ownership transfer for the humanitarian division. I built it from scratch after Vietnam. Your father never touched it. He couldn't. He didn't know how to help people he couldn't control. He paused, looked down, chose his words like weapons. I left it to you because you never asked for anything, but you always showed up. When it mattered. He exhaled. I couldn't stop what they planned, but I made sure they couldn't erase you. His eyes locked on the camera. You don't need their permission. You never did. All you need now is proof they forged your name. That's your keystone. Everything else falls after that. Then the screen faded to black. No signature, no timestamp, just truth. I sat there in that cold steel room, a war vet holding a legacy like it was a weapon. And I knew something for certain. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was reconstruction. Time to dig up the evidence. Time to find the signature that would bury them. Back in my apartment, I laid everything out like it was evidence in a war tribunal. Because in many ways, it was. Grandpa's documents, the 2 video files, the ledgers, the share transfer. And both flash drives, one from Box 17, one from Vault 6B, sat side by side on my desk like they were daring me to move first. But the real weapon wasn't in the hardware. It was buried somewhere in the fine print, somewhere in the quiet ink of betrayal. And I had a feeling it had a name on it. I started with the emails. Grandpa had saved them all PDFs printed out time-stamped and labeled by subject. Each chain was a breadcrumb trail: internal communications, legal consultations, board correspondences. Most of it seemed standard until I reached one with the subject line Re-Emergency Resolution Filing, Estate Contingency Override. It had been forwarded from a private legal address in Charleston, attached a declaration of mental instability, signed by a name I didn't recognize, Dr. Cambria Finney, a retired physician apparently. The letter stated that I had ongoing symptoms consistent with post-deployment psychosis and was incapable of managing executive decision-making without direct oversight. I had never met this woman, never spoken to her, and yet she had filed a sworn affidavit with the estate court claiming I was unfit to inherit anything. It was the keystone Grandpa warned me about. This was the lie that made the rest of the fraud possible. I ran a trace on her name. She lived one town over on the edge of a neighborhood built before the concept of zoning laws. A tiny white house front porch, sagging mailbox, leaning like it gave up years ago. I parked across the street and waited. No lights, no movement. Then just past 5:30 p.m., a sedan pulled into the driveway. A woman stepped out carrying 2 grocery bags, thin gray hair, bent slightly, but steady. The name on the mailbox matched. I approached slowly, hands in my jacket, voice low. Dr. Finney. She froze like prey. I didn't come closer. I'm not here to hurt you, but you signed something about me, something false, and I need to know why. She blinked, hard, like her brain was buffering. Did Rhett Greaves send you? Her voice was small, dry, but intact. He told me you were mentally unstable, she whispered. Said you'd suffered traumatic breaks overseas, that you believed things that weren't real. And you just signed it. She looked down at her hands. I thought it was for insurance, legal cleanup. He said you'd agreed to it, that it was just a formality. He lied. Her eyes filled, not with tears, with something worse, realization. I didn't think they'd actually file it, she said. You thought he needed fake medical records for fun. I thought. She stopped. I thought I was helping him protect the estate. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just said, get a lawyer. And don't answer his calls. She nodded, then retreated into her house and locked the door. Back home, I cross-referenced the affidavit. It was the foundation of the estate suppression, the legal document that allowed my father's lawyers to file the emergency override reroute shares and declare me deceased in the system. It was all built on a signature from a doctor who had never seen me. I had what I needed to tear the whole thing apart, but I needed backup, and there was only one person I trusted to build a case that wouldn't just win, but bury them. I called Sylvia Marsh, former legal aid warrior, Harvard Law, burned out brilliant and exactly the kind of person you find when your options are lawless or lethal. She opened her apartment door in sweatpants, a threadbare hoodie, and a coffee mug that said, "Some days I sue people, some days I don't." She took one look at me, stepped aside, and said, "This better be illegal." "It is." "Good." She handed me a slice of cold pizza and pointed to the table. "Start talking." I gave her everything: the files, the false death certificate, the fake medical diagnosis, the videos, the trust transfer, the ledgers, the property deed. She listened without interrupting, flipping pages like a blackjack dealer who already knew how the hand would end. She didn't speak until she hit the signature page on the equity transfer. Then she smirked. "Classic," she muttered. "They filed it through a Delaware shell. Sloppy." "Think we can kill it?" "Not only can we kill it," she said, "we can burn their entire structure to the ground." She started pulling out reference guides and case files. I hadn't seen someone move that fast since a raid briefing. "I'll need a forensic signature analyst. And you'll need to stay invisible. Don't talk to the press. Don't post. And don't, for the love of God, try to handle this solo. I wasn't planning on it." "Good, because this isn't justice. This is a knife fight in a glass elevator." She grabbed her phone and called someone named Miles. "Crow," she said. "Got a live one. Forgery inheritance theft declared dead whole 9 yards. Bring the clean laptop." She hung up and turned back to me. He's the best in the business. Intel contractor, can smell a forged signature at 50 paces. And he doesn't blink at high-profile targets. What do you need from me? Full authorization. Everything. And a copy of your military records, signed originals if you've got them. I pulled a sealed folder from my bag. Discharge orders, deployment papers, VA letters. She flipped through it, nodded. Perfect. This proves you're alive and never consented to the transfer. You really think we can win? She gave me a look that felt like armor. This isn't about winning. It's about rewriting the ending. Miles showed up 20 minutes later. Glasses, low ponytail, black laptop, zero small talk. He opened the transfer documents, held them up to a UV light, and pointed. This G-loop is inconsistent. Here and here flatline. But over here? He flipped to one of my original service forms. Natural curvature, pen pressure, signature rhythm. This one's real. And this one, scanned and lifted. Probably from your 2018 DD-2114. I can match it pixel for pixel. Can you prove it in court under oath, 10 minutes or less? He handed Sylvia a printout. She grinned. They filed a forged stock transfer under a dead woman's name, she said. That's fraud, wire, fraud, perjury, and possibly conspiracy. Is that enough? It's more than enough. We're not just pulling the thread, Sierra. We're unraveling the whole damn sweater. There's something deeply surreal about standing in front of a courthouse with a folder full of evidence proving you're not dead. People passed by like I was just another suit. No one knew the woman in the gray coat and boots was about to walk into vital records and argue for her own legal resurrection. I had the original's birth certificate, passport, social security card. All real. All in my name. And still, the woman behind the counter frowned at her monitor like I'd just told her I was a time traveler. Your file's been sealed, she said. Court order. What court? Family estate division. Emergency motion, sealed record. Can I see it? Not unless you get a judge to open it. How long does that take? She raised an eyebrow. Depends on who you pissed off. Back in my car, I stared at the printout she'd given me. It confirmed what I suspected someone had filed to declare me deceased using medical evidence, fraudulent medical evidence. They'd stamped it, sealed it, and moved on with their day like they were renewing a parking permit, and tucked deep in the metadata a name. Amelia Halden, my half-sister. She hadn't shown up to the will reading, too polished, too strategic, always playing chess while the rest of us argued over checkers. Her name was listed as the estate contact on the filing, which meant she hadn't just known. She'd helped. I called Sylvia. She's in it, I said. How deep enough to have her name on the paperwork? Sylvia didn't sound surprised. Time to play offense. That afternoon, Miles sent over his full forensic analysis. The forged signature used on the stock transfer came from a 2018 VA benefits form lifted, scanned, and pasted into the equity document. His software showed mismatched pixel grids, inconsistencies in stroke pressure, and a compression trail that screamed tampering. The affidavit was airtight. So was the email trail from Dr. Finney. We had time-stamped proof of coordination between her and Rhett Halden. Sylvia filed for an injunction that night. Emergency motion, federal fraud case. We had the receipts. All we needed now was the right judge. The news broke 2 days later. Nash Wilder, investigative journalist, ex-military, and the only person I trusted to keep the narrative clean, published the first piece declared dead. The heiress who was erased for $41 million. It spread like gasoline. Military blogs picked it up, shareholder forums, veterans' rights groups. People messaged me screenshots. This real? Is this about you? I didn't reply. I just watched the view count climb. The Halden family didn't stay quiet long. That night, Rhett went live on a local business channel. Navy suit, American flag pin, that curated warmth he used on investors. We're saddened by the misinformation, he said. My daughter has struggled since returning from service. The family has done its best to support her. They cut to B-roll of me exiting a military transport. Then a headline from years ago, civilian casualty inquiry, Sergeant Halden refused strike order. They didn't mention that the building was full of non-combatants, that I refused to sign off on the strike, that the inquiry cleared me within a week. No. They aired the footage to make me look unstable, to paint me as damaged goods. To tell the world I wasn't fit to lead anything, not a company, not a foundation, not even my own life. I almost threw my phone through the wall. Instead, I called Sylvia. They're trying to discredit me. Good, she said. That means they're scared. 5 minutes later, Miles sent me a single message. Let them overplay. The receipts don't blink. The next day, Nash published the second article. This one had quotes from 2 former Halden Cairn employees and a leaked internal document showing a plan to restructure the company under full family control without shareholder consent. The document showed a signature block labeled Sierra Halden deceased, and underneath Amelia's signature. It was over. We filed a federal fraud complaint within 24 hours. Sylvia walked it into the district courthouse herself. I stayed home, hands curled around a mug of coffee I didn't remember brewing. At 3:12 p.m., she called me. We're on the docket. Emergency hearing. 48 hours. Do we have enough? We have too much. It's almost overkill. I laughed, the first real laugh I'd let out in weeks. Then I sat down, pulled out Grandpa's second video, and played it again, just to remind myself why I started. He looked straight into the camera. No trembling hands, no dramatics. Just quiet fire. They're going to lie. And they're going to lie big. But the truth doesn't blink. The video cut out. I closed my laptop, and for the first time since this started, I felt ready. 2 mornings later, I stood outside the courthouse with Sylvia and Miles, dressed in black. No lipstick, no jewelry, just clean lines and steady breath. Sylvia leaned in and whispered, "You look like leadership." I didn't reply. I just walked in, like I owned the floor. Because I did, and they were about to find out. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the tension was. Judge Maren Kilpatrick was known for 2 things, a zero-tolerance policy for theatrics and a memory sharp enough to quote cases from 10 years ago verbatim. Sylvia said she was the best we could hope for, brutal, fair, unshakable. I wore black, tailored, simple, no makeup, no expression. Because this wasn't a show, it was an execution. Rhett Halden walked in like he was about to pitch a billion-dollar merger. Custom navy suit, monogrammed cufflinks, a team of 2 attorneys, both from the kind of law firm that made headlines and never lost cases unless it was profitable. Behind him, Amelia, hair in a perfect twist, pearl earrings, eyes like polished marble. She didn't look at me, didn't have to. The silence between us said everything. The clerk called the case Sierra Halden versus Estate of Marshall. Halden motion emergency review of estate fraud, false identity suppression, and unauthorized asset transfer. Sylvia stood. Your Honor, we are here to contest the fraudulent execution of legal documents that declared my client legally deceased and the subsequent unauthorized transfer of over $41 million in corporate and personal assets. Benson Price, Rhett's attorney, rose with a sigh that had clearly been rehearsed. Your Honor, this is a family dispute dressed up in courtroom drag. The decedent's will was read-reviewed, and Judge Kilpatrick raised one hand. Mr. Price, do you dispute that your clients declared Miss Halden deceased in official filings? Benson hesitated. We acted under the belief she had abandoned her familial and legal obligations, so no death certificate. We had confirmation from a certified physician. Which one? He shifted. Dr. Cambria Finney. Sylvia stepped forward. Your Honor, if it pleases the court, I'd like to submit sworn testimony from Dr. Finney herself, along with evidence that the diagnosis was fabricated under pressure from Mr. Halden. She handed a folder to the bailiff. Judge Kilpatrick opened it, skimmed the first page, and nodded. Admitted. Continue. Then came the video. We had filed a request the night before to admit the flash drive into evidence. Judge Kilpatrick approved it without flinching. The screen lit up. And there he was. Grandpa, backlit by soft sun, voice steady. If they're watching this, it means they tried to bury her. But this isn't just money, it's memory. And if they burned hers down, this is how she comes back. No one moved when the clip ended. Judge Kilpatrick folded her hands. Defense's response. Benson cleared his throat. Emotionally compelling, Your Honor, but irrelevant to legal standing. then perhaps the forged signature, falsified medical record, and paper trail of wire fraud will help, Sylvia said, handing over another binder. Inside Miles's forensic report, the fake equity documents, the scanned signature overlay, every lie, every stolen asset, every manipulated filing, cross-referenced, time-stamped, and authenticated. Judge Kilpatrick flipped through it for 30 full seconds. The kind of silence that makes your heart think it's in a cage. Then let the record reflect that the court finds the evidence of identity suppression and signature forgery both credible and serious. Benson tried again. Your Honor, these events occurred under the belief Miss Halden was incapacitated. You didn't just try to manipulate this court, Judge Kilpatrick said. Voice low. You tried to erase a person, a veteran, your daughter. She turned to Amelia. And you facilitated it. Amelia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The gavel hit once. This court recognizes Sierra Halden as the sole legal heir to Marshall Halden's estate and the rightful controller of Halden Cairn Defense Group and all associated assets. All transfers, sales, and filings made under false authority are hereby frozen pending criminal investigation. I didn't move, didn't smirk, didn't breathe until the courtroom erupted into murmurs. Rhett's jaw was so tight I thought his teeth might break. Amelia looked like she'd just learned the world had gravity. Sylvia leaned in. You just took the throne, Halden. Outside, the press was waiting. Cameras, microphones, flashes of light, and shouted questions. Nash stood across the street, his crew filming everything. He caught my eye, nodded once. I walked past all of it. No statement, no spin. Just boots on concrete and the weight of my name finally sitting right. That night I met Amelia. Neutral ground, a hotel cafe, private corner booth. She was already seated when I arrived. 2 coffees on the table. Neither touched. She stood too fast when she saw me. I didn't know, she said. About the death certificate? About the forgery? I said nothing. Dad said it was restructuring. I just signed where he told me to. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did. She looked down at her cup. I was scared. So you chose survival. You have to believe me. No, I said. I really don't. She flinched. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I thought I was protecting what was ours. Ours never included me. Silence again. Not courtroom silence, the kind that grows in the spaces between sisters who stopped being family a long time ago. I stood to leave. What now, she asked. You get what's fair under the law, I said, but not access, not power, not a seat at the table. I'm still your sister, and I'm still alive, I said. That didn't seem to matter before. I walked away without looking back. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. The win in court felt like a breath you hold too long. Not relief, just release. I sat in my apartment, lights off, laptop open, watching headlines pile up like bricks in a wall I didn't build but now owned. Court declares Sierra Halden legal. Heir overturns $41 million asset transfer. Dead woman walks into court and wins. Halden family power. Grab collapses in federal court. It was all true, but none of it felt real yet. Until Nash called. You ready to burn it down publicly, already on fire, I said. We met at a diner just off Route 19. Same place where Grandpa used to take me after every softball game. Same booth, same cracked leather seat, same chipped mug. Nash pulled out his recorder, set it on the table, and gave me the look only real reporters give, the one that says, don't hold back. I didn't. I told him everything. The forged affidavit, the vaults, the erased identity, the fake medical record, the death certificate, the company theft, the courtroom, Amelia's silence. He just nodded, scribbling shorthand, recording every word. You want it on record? He asked. All of it. No edits, no edits. He smiled like a man loading a missile. Then let's publish some truth. 2 days later, the headline hit, The Heiress. They tried to bury Sierra Halden, reclaims her name. It went viral within 6 hours. Veteran groups reposted it. Corporate watchdogs analyzed it. Board members scrambled. PR firms flailed. The public wasn't just interested, they were invested. And that made my father sloppy. By the afternoon, Rhett gave another interview. This time on a national finance show. He sat under perfect lighting jaw, clenched voice calm. Too calm. "I have nothing but love for my daughter," he said. "But she's clearly been manipulated. She's unstable. We all know her military record is complicated." There it was, the mask slipping, no subtlety, just the quiet weaponization of a trauma I never hid but never exploited. "We're pursuing options to protect the integrity of the company," he added, "for the shareholders." They ran a split screen with my military photo. Then the phrase I knew was coming: refused strike order civilian casualty inquiry. Again, and again, and again. They wanted to make me look dangerous, unhinged. They wanted to erase me again, this time not through paperwork, but reputation. But this time I was ready. Miles had been monitoring Halden Cairns' internal system since the court case. He texted me 2 hours after Rhett's interview aired. They're dumping files, digital purging, backdated entries, erased correspondence, hidden transaction logs, all within the humanitarian division. Your division. He sent screenshots, time-stamped deletion commands, ghosted user IDs, command lines linking back to Amelia's personal login. I forwarded everything to Sylvia. "They're still trying to rewrite it." "Good," she said. "That makes them desperate." Nash dropped a second article the next morning. Halden Cairn deleting internal files audit team investigates. The company's stock dipped 4% in 2 hours. Shareholder calls flooded in. Legal forums lit up. Bloggers, analysts, subreddits. The narrative was no longer mine to control. It belonged to the public, and they were choosing sides. At 6:14 p.m., Halden Cairn issued a statement. "Due to ongoing legal matters and media scrutiny, the board of directors has frozen all asset movements pending full internal audit." Translation: "We lost. We're scrambling. Please stop looking." But it was too late. They didn't just burn my inheritance. They burned the illusion. And once the fire started, no one cared who lit the match, only what it revealed. That weekend, I visited the Hollow Foundation, the property Grandpa left under my name. It was quiet. 3 buildings, brick, worn but solid, a flagpole missing its rope, a community center that once held outreach events for veterans and underserved youth. I walked the perimeter in silence. No guards, no gates, no ghosts, just ground, just possibility. The following Monday, I filed the reinstatement paperwork, reopened the foundation under my name, reactivated the nonprofit license Grandpa had drafted years before. He'd called it Hollow Forward in one of his letters. I kept the name because it meant something. I didn't hold a press conference, didn't live stream the deed, didn't tweet a logo. I just got to work, painted walls, fixed windows, called the same contractors Grandpa used, hired veterans who needed a paycheck more than a thank you note, and one by one the place filled with breath again. Nash came by a week later, recorder in hand. "Want to do a story on the reopening?" "Not yet." "Why not let it grow quietly first?" He nodded. "Fair. But when you're ready, I know where to find you." He smiled and left. 2 days after that, I got a letter. No return address. Just an envelope with my name written in Grandpa's handwriting. Inside a photo of me and him on the porch when I was 7. Paper crowns. Matching t-shirts. A lemon pie between us. On the back in ink, "Takes more than fire to stop royalty." I didn't frame it. I pinned it to the wall behind my desk. Raw, crooked, real. That night, I locked up the foundation and stood outside under a sky just beginning to bruise with stars, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel like I was still fighting. I just felt present, solid. The woman they tried to delete had become the woman who built something permanent. And I wasn't done yet. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no press release, no donor gala. Just a mismatched set of keys, a clipboard full of permits, and me standing in front of a building that used to house silence. The new plaque on the front read, "The Hollow Foundation Veterans, Women, Forward." I installed it myself. Crooked, honest, permanent. The first thing I did was walk through every room alone. No music, no contractors, no plans. Just the hum of old wires and echoes. Grandpa had been here years before. The paperwork proved it. But the walls carried more than paper. The place felt held, not just owned. The conference room still had the outlines of chairs where veteran support groups used to sit. The kitchenette had a coffee stain shaped like Texas. The back hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and dust my grandfather sent. It wasn't haunted, it was waiting. I called Dean Vasquez first. 2 tours. One metal hip, former nonprofit founder, burned out broke and still building ramps for disabled vets on his weekends. He answered the phone like he thought it was a prank. Dean, it's Sierra Halden. I'm reopening Hollow. Long pause. Hell of a name to hear again. You in, if the coffee's better this time, yeah. He showed up 2 days later with a toolbox and a folder of ideas. We started with what we knew: legal assistance for female vets, housing navigation, ROTC mentorships, career transition workshops. I called the last one Operation Second Voice. Grandpa would have hated the name, but he would have loved the mission. I didn't advertise, didn't recruit. I let the walls speak for themselves. And slowly, quietly, they came. A woman named Tori, dishonorably discharged after reporting harassment, looking for someone to believe her. A girl from the local ROTC unit asking how to fix a leadership mess without losing her rank. A mother of 2 who served 4 years was denied VA housing because of a paperwork error and now lived in her car with both kids. We made files for each. Nothing fancy, just manila folders labeled in Sharpie stacked neatly on a shelf beside a ceramic dog Grandpa won at a carnival in 1978. I didn't try to fix everything. I didn't pretend to have all the answers. I just answered when the phone rang and listened when it didn't. 2 weeks in, Nash emailed me a draft. The foundation that rose from ashes. It was clean, compassionate, not exploitative. I almost said yes, but I didn't. Hold it, I told him. Let it grow real first. He understood. That was the thing about survivors we know when the light comes too soon. Let it build, let it root, then let it roar. One evening, I stepped outside just as the streetlights buzzed to life. That's when I saw her. Amelia. Standing across the street, no words, no movement, just watching. She didn't wave, didn't smile, and I didn't flinch, not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to give her. No anger, no closure, no access. She walked away before I could decide whether I'd imagined her. Fine by me. The next day, a manila envelope arrived by courier. Inside, a formal withdrawal from all Halden Cairn board positions signed by Amelia. No note, no request, just a full exit. I stapled it to her file and filed it under finally. That week, Dean and I hosted the first unofficial legal clinic for at-risk female veterans. 6 came through the door, all different, all carrying the same weight in different bags. I sat with each one, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. We didn't solve everything, but we named things. And that was the beginning. Later that night, after they'd all left, I stayed behind, sweeping, locking up, resetting chairs that had been nervously moved during stories about dishonorable discharges, silent panic attacks, and moments of near collapse. I walked the halls again, stopped at the bulletin board, pinned a fresh sheet that read, Client Bowo 1, Tori. She asked for someone to listen, so I did. It wasn't a declaration. It was a start. Then I did what I hadn't done since court. I opened the final envelope Grandpa had left. It had been sitting in my filing cabinet for weeks, sealed in red wax, untouched. Inside, a sketched floor plan, a half-completed business application, and a note, make something they can't erase. I smiled. Then I got to work. Within 2 weeks, I filed for a second LLC Greaves Insight Group strategic counseling and advocacy for transitioning female veterans. Named it after Grandpa's mother, Lydia Greaves, a nurse who served in WW2s and was erased from every company history book despite being on the founding committee for the original Halden Health Division. I found her records in one of the vault folders, typed on a manual typewriter. No accolades, no ceremony, just service. I wouldn't let that happen again. The new office space was a small studio 5 blocks from Hollow. No fancy reception, just wood floors, tall windows, and one desk. It smelled like possibility, and paint, and second chances. I kept it quiet, no press, no announcements, just a stack of intake forms, a new bank account, and a cheap metal sign on the door. But every time I unlocked it, I thought of all the women who'd been told they were too emotional, too unstable, too complicated. And I thought, no one's ever complicated when they're allowed to speak freely. By the time the foundation turned 1 month old, we had 12 clients, 3 funders, and a growing wait list. But we still weren't done, because this wasn't just healing, it was building something from the bones they left behind. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove I existed. I just had to show up, so I did. Every day, one file, one conversation, one decision they'd never get to overwrite. I never wanted a legacy. Not like this. Not scorched earth and closed doors. Not nameplates pried from walls. Not a court case that turned into a family funeral with everyone still breathing. But here I was, holding the keys to a future they tried to erase, and building something from the ashes they left behind. The studio had no heating the first month. Some mornings I wore 2 jackets just to type intake forms, but I didn't care, because every piece of paper I touched had my name on it, and it wasn't forged, borrowed, or buried. It was mine. Some things stayed bruised. There were nights I'd sit alone in the office after everyone left, still expecting the phone to ring with bad news, still glancing over my shoulder like the past might crash through the door. But that's the thing about ghosts. They stop chasing you when you stop running. I got a letter from Marcus, typed, formal, legal adjacent. I wasn't part of what they did. I didn't know. I didn't reply. Not because I hated him, because silence sometimes is the only reply that keeps the boundary intact. You don't have to let everyone back in just because you forgave them. Amelia tried to call once. I didn't answer. She left a message. You made your point. She still didn't understand. This wasn't a point. This was a perimeter. And she was no longer inside it. One afternoon, Dean and I stood in front of the new mural being painted across the outer wall of the hollow foundation. A local artist, a woman who served 2 tours in Iraq, was painting a row of silhouettes stepping forward through a ruined wall. No faces, no slogans, just movement. Dean handed me a coffee and said, "This is what it looks like when we stop apologizing for surviving." I nodded, because he was right. Nash eventually ran his follow-up piece. The woman they tried to bury built a place you can't tear down. It was quiet, sharp, free of drama, and it did exactly what it needed to do. Not praise me, but protect the work. The story wasn't about me anymore. It was about the others who walked through these doors. Tori came back 6 weeks later, this time not for help, but to volunteer. She'd found her footing, got stable housing, started working part-time at a community center. She asked if we needed someone to answer phones on Tuesdays. I said yes without blinking, because that's what the rebuild looks like. Not perfection, not redemption, just someone showing up again. I framed the original deed to the foundation, hung it behind my desk, not because I needed the reminder, but because sometimes clients would glance at it, then back at me, and I could see it hit them. This place didn't fall from the sky. It was built, brick, by someone who'd also been buried and climbed out. I still get emails, people asking, "How did you do it?" They want a clean answer, a checklist, a podcast episode. But there is no how in surviving this kind of war. There's only refuse to disappear. Keep everything. Document more than you speak. Trust your silence, but only until it's time to make noise. Burn when necessary, but rebuild more. That's the formula, if there is one. Sometimes I drive past the old Halden Cairn building. It's still there. Same glass windows, same executive parking spots, same people pretending they're not living on borrowed time. Rhett hasn't been back since the board froze him out. Last I heard, he was on sabbatical, no statement, no apology, just silence, the only currency he ever understood. I don't check the stock price. I don't care what Forbes says. Because the thing about building from scratch is, you stop checking whether it matches the palace they kicked you out of. You're too busy drawing blueprints for your own. One morning, I passed a girl sitting on the front steps of the foundation. ROTC jacket, boot scuffed, phone dead, eyes full of questions she hadn't said aloud yet. I opened the door. "You looking for something?" She nodded slowly. "You, Sierra, yeah. Someone said you help girls like me." I held the door open wider. "No," I said. I help women like you become something no one sees coming. She stepped inside. That was it. No drama, just a door that didn't close behind her. People think stories like this end with revenge, with dramatic takedowns and scorched earth speeches and final scenes in courtrooms that feel like victory parades. But the truth is, the story didn't end when I won. It began when I walked out of that courthouse and didn't look back. When I chose not to rebuild the family name, but to build something better without it. When I stopped waiting for them to change and changed everything instead. Now I unlock the door every morning, flip the lights on, boot up the coffee machine, glance at the corkboard where I pinned Grandpa's last note, make something they can't erase. And I think I did. I am. We will. Thank you for reading. And if your family ever tried to erase you from your own story, start writing again. With your own name. In pen.